Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 37. Lovely little shade of gray. Yes, Naruto said, sitting with his arms crossed on a couch in the common area, almost looking like he was pouting since he was looking to his left, away from the person he was actually speaking to. No, Nojiko replied, trying to bore a hole into Naruto's head with her gaze as she sat next to him on his right. Yes, I'm doing it, it's got to be faster, Naruto said, trying to insist upon his point. He jumped up out of his seat and walked to the window to point at the titanic landmass blocking the ship's way. I can totally climb that. It might take a day, or more, but yeah, I can climb that. You're the only one that can, Nojiko yelled, flicking him in the nose to elicit a yelp from him. We can't even see the top of it. No one we know ever has, and unless you get permission to do it they'll just shoot us off anyway if you try. And what about the ship? I've thought about that, Naruto said to the navigator of his crew. I'll get Polly to tie ropes around me and like 1,000 clones. I think we could make it. That's if the clones could all stick to the wall with their chakra, take the strain of having to lug a ship up a 90-degree angle for miles before dragging it across however long the top of the landmass was before dropping it back into the ocean. It can't be that big of a climb. Actually, forgetting about the clones and ignoring them for a moment, could the ship itself even take all of that abuse? It would be bouncing off of the wall again and again. The keel would probably snap like a twig before even half of that journey was done, even if the red line wasn't that tall. Almost in complete sync, the entire crew and Perona punched Naruto in the head, sending him to the floor. You're not trying to drag the ship up the red line. They all yelled at him as they stood over his fallen body. What the hell are you trying to do? Soren yelled at him, acid generated by anger forming a steam rising from his body. Why are you so freaking weird, Uzumaki? There is normal way to do everything, including something like this, ways that are possible and not completely asinine. Do you know how fucking close we are to Marineford? They'd find you climbing that thing, with a ship attached to you and a ton of clones, and shoot you right off the wall. Fine, Naruto yelled, nursing the 10 lumps on his head with tears forming in his eyes. Then how the hell do you suggest we get across this time? Jumping off of the calm belt isn't going to do anything this time like it did when we got to the Grand Line from the East Blue, since this stupid red line wraps around the planet. No reverse mountain attempt, even if they had tried it the first time, which they hadn't at the logical breakdown of them owning a marine ship at the beginning of the crew's inception. Any route to reverse mountain that they could find would just dump them back at the start of the Grand Line. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Perona cut in, waving her hands around from her seated position back in a chair. What makes you think I'd actually go with you guys all the way to the New World? Mariah-sama took a crew there before he got me to join him and they got torn apart. No way I'm going there with you like it's some kind of day trip. Okay, Soren said, leaning against the door leading to the deck. Feel free to jump ship and hope for the best all by yourself the very next time we make port. That should work out just swimmingly for you. I'm not some weakling, Perona argued back at the acid-spitting man before turning her back with her arms crossed haughtily. I don't need a crew. If I desire company or assistance I'll just procure some helpers, but none of you are cute enough for my tastes to work for me. Who's not cute? Miss Valentine, Murat, and Nojiko all said with deceptively sweet voices that promised pain if the correct answer was not given by the tagalong Perona. Vivi put a hand under her chin as she started pacing around and thinking to herself, well, we can go to Sabayati, we should be able to find a way over or around the red line from there. If we can't, then there's nowhere we can go to do it. She nodded firmly, deciding that it was the best course of action. Yes, we should go to the Sabayati archipelago. It's where my father's ship stops from Alabasta whenever he had to go to Marijoy. They would always send representatives to accompany us from there. It's the best place to go. Nojiko figured that was as good an idea as any. It was definitely better than trying to drag the natural disaster up the side of the red line by use of clone power. She doubted that it was even possible. It was absolutely huge to climb and their ship was utterly massive. It had way too much space for all of them, even with all of the added things done in Water 7. Okay. The guy that talked to us on Constellation Island said it wasn't far from there. Let's move a ways away from the red line and venture further away from the calm belt. If it's really that close, then it shouldn't be hard to find. Still not convinced of the current plan of action, Naruto grumbled his disagreement. I still think you should hitch a few ropes to me and my clones and have us try to scale the red line. I mean, wouldn't that just be awesome? There was no affirmative response from the crew as they all did their best to ignore him. You guys really suck sometimes, you know that. XXX. Later that day, sitting on the grass-covered deck to meditate was often how Naruto kept himself in touch with the power swimming within himself. For decades he had been randomly doing so just to keep a touch on the surroundings he found himself around, as well as in order to gauge his own powers in comparison to others. As far as people on the ship went, he could easily judge their combat capabilities in comparison to his. Throughout the ship he could feel the very different energies of his crew. The easiest to sense was Soren's. It was a steadily growing power that one didn't need ability to sense to feel. His training with the Rokushiki styles at this point made it so that his physical presence was always radiating some kind of power. It was somewhat untamed, but that came with the unstable territory of his devil fruit powers. The scariest thing about it was that he learned from conversing with CP9 that he could channel his devil fruit abilities into the Rokushiki 6 styles. That would be an intimidating concept once he got the practice down. The next up on the power scale of his crew was surprisingly Miss Valentine. Her aura was always calm and even, something that went right along with her normal demeanor. At first believing that her powers restrained her to being a strictly support fighter, flying and crashing to the ground, her style had developed extensively since joining the crew with advice from others, mostly him, on how to use them in new ways that she hadn't thought up herself. Her speed with the specially developed Hanho, Feather Step, was absurd, and her ability to weigh a foe down with a touch was a boon of an ability even when she chose not to swing around her umbrella to crack skulls. Johnny and Yosaku were more or less even as far as he could sense. While they specialized and went into two completely different directions as swordsmen, the development was incredible. Johnny's foot and sword draw speed improved every day due to his self-imposed training, to the point where he would rather resheath his sword and try quick draw attacks than engage in traditional sword fights. Yosaku's growing strength was scary. Getting Miss Valentine to weigh down Kubikiraboucho with her powers for him to train with was working aces for him. The weight seals placed on the sword to activate upon being unstrapped from the harness and his own strength gave him the ability to break steel with the amount of force he could generate. Nojiko was a devilishly accurate shot, and with what they now knew to be her haki, she had limited precognitive abilities in combat, and now that she was able to move freely with her waver skates, her mobility could actually allow her to act on the haki by moving around accordingly. With just normal firearms she would be scary for someone to fight, but he might have potentially given her more power than she knew what to do with when he fixed her guns with seals. The three elements available to her were wind, fire, and lightning, each with their own advantages in combat and their own particular drain on her chakra reserves that were being flexed with every elementally charged shot she fired. Vivi could dodge almost anything sent at her without moving out of a 5-foot radius of her starting area, something that Karu had picked up as well, giving Vivi a mounted assault that was more than just a straight-on charge the way it was when they had first met. She was also finding new methods of which to utilize her very versatile dual weapons. One had to wonder when she had gotten so many to use in combat. Polly had a pretty strong aura going for him as well. Still, he hadn't been seen going all out before, but he hadn't seemed like he had been in over his head since the assault on Eni's lobby, so it was only a matter of playing the waiting game to give a fair opinion on him. He was easily able to handle everything sent their way since he joined the crew though. Murat didn't fight, instead opting to teach Funkfried tricks. Said tricks were often of the violent variety and mostly involved the sword elephant using its given abilities to keep her out of trouble and keep her safe. She didn't seem as tentative about everything as she did upon joining, but she still knew she was most certainly not a fighter by any stretch of the imagination, which was just fine. She was meant to be the healer, not another warrior. His thoughts gave way to Karu pecking him in the side of the head, prompting him to grab the duck in a side headlock. Oi! What's up with you? Karu let out a quack that Naruto was able to understand. I don't know if you can come with us off of the ship this time. I'm not your owner, asked Vivi Heim. I don't see why you're coming to me about this. Another quack came from Karu as he tried to wrestle out of Naruto's weak, unserious grasp. Quack. Naruto let the desert-dwelling duck go and raised an eyebrow. She would not do anything I asked her to do. The stuff I made her do was training, that's why she listened to me back then. Kaoru pecked him in the head and let out a quack that sounded akin to a sigh, saying that he was a fool, getting Naruto to shake the duck repeatedly. What? Who's stupid? I'll chuck you overboard, you damn duck. Say something again and I'll make Peking pigeon out of you. In response, Kaoru pecked Naruto in the head repeatedly and turned the skirmish into a wrestling match on the deck. Oh, you bastard. What are you two doing? Both Naruto and Kaoru stopped fighting to see Vivi standing right there, looking at them suspiciously as her foot tapped the ground repeatedly, waiting on an explanation. Kaoru took advantage of the lull in the action to continue pecking Naruto in the head with free shots as he tried to explain, I'm just messing around with the duck Vivi Heim. It's cool. I love nature. He stopped Kaoru's beak from pecking him once he was finished. Seriously, do that again and I'm tying you to the front of the ship. I really doubt that, the Alabastan princess said, standing there with her hands on her hips, but I can't bring myself to think of a reason why you two would be fighting or to really care since you're not serious. Quack, quack, Kaoru said, prompting Naruto to look at him and nod in understanding as the two got up off of the ground. Naruto cleared his throat and prepared to speak to Vivi, prompted to do so by Kaoru, who more or less quacked at Naruto to put his money where his mouth was towards the point they had been fighting over. So hence it was put up or shut up time over the main point of their miniature conflict, Vivi Heim. I was just thinking, you should get a tattoo, right here. He said, grabbing her arm and pointing at her bicep. It would be awesome. No way she'd ever do that. Listening to his input was one thing because he was the captain and her trainer, but getting a tattoo. Really? She said, looking at the area on her arm that she was directed to pay attention to. I mean, I never thought of it, but if you think it would be a good idea, I don't see why not. Vivi seemed to be seriously contemplating getting a tattoo. I mean, Nojiko has a tattoo and Nami does too. It wouldn't look bad on me, would it? Well, hell, maybe she would do anything he asked her to. That was almost cool. Naruto had the complete trust and faith of the princess of a powerful nation. Most guys probably would have found some underhanded way to take advantage of that, but even if he was that kind of guy, Vivi was too sweet to take advantage of. Naruto looked at Kaoru and the victorious look the duck had on his face before sighing. Yeah, okay, when we disembark you can come with us this time. He said in defeat. To the victor went the spoils. Now he had to convince Vivi to not get a tattoo, because if she did, then Agaram, Chaka, Hell, Koza, and even Cobra himself would probably try to kill him for it. No tattoo, Vivi Heim, even though it wouldn't look bad on you, you're too cute to get one. But you just said. Vivi tried to dispute, a blush on her cheeks from being called cute. I know, Naruto said, waving off his previous tattoo comment, but your bird was pecking me in the head, so maybe it was the concussion talking. My mind is clear now. No tattoo. He saw her scrunch her nose in thought, putting a bit of alarm into his heart. No tattoo. Say it with me, no tattoo. Fine, Vivi said, finally giving up the thought if he was really insisting against it. I won't get a tattoo. But pirates have tattoos of their Jolly Roger a lot of times, don't they? What's wrong with me getting one of our crews? The fact that we're not pirates, and I wish people would recognize that. Naruto said with an irritated growl. Their Jolly Roger didn't even look that much like anyone else's at all. Sometimes it didn't even look like one, period, and the fact that you're a princess of a country. He then smirked at her and put his hands on her shoulders. Have you paid attention to the flag though? It's a skull version of my face. If you got that kind of tattoo, it would probably say a lot more than you being a member of this crew. Realizing that he was right and that the Jolly Roger was more or less a skull version of Naruto, Vivi realized what such a thing could be taken as by an outside observer. Not even that, there was no way such a thing would ever be allowed to die even among the crew as a joke of her being Naruto's property, due to the tattoo. Instead of just her cheeks, this time Vivi's entire face turned red as she started sputtering nonsensically in embarrassment. Should I go for the kill here? Naruto thought to himself as he noticed Vivi's mortified appearance. There was something else tattoo-wise he could say that would probably stick with her for life due to its connotation, but then again she was only 16 and fairly naive, and he didn't want to break her. Okay, so no joke about other possible places to put the tattoo in case she's embarrassed about getting it on her arm where everyone could see it, hinting that only I would see the other places because they're private. That's too far for Vivi Heim, she'd never talk to me again. Joke not being told and reaction not being given, the thing to take from the conversation was that Naruto had successfully diverted Vivi from getting a tattoo that he almost convinced her to get in the first place because of a point that had to be proven for an argument with a duck, that he lost. XXX. Some time later. Either that place is real or I'm still drunk from breakfast. Soren said to himself aloud from his position in the crow's nest as he looked at the landmark on the horizon. Well, I have a feeling that you're just going to love this next place, nature boy. He yelled down the mast so that he could be heard, but I have no idea what it is. Hearing the commotion from the acid-spitting man up top, Naruto grabbed a pair of binoculars and looked out front at the landmark he was talking about. Whoa. Is that a bunch of islands made of trees? A grin crossed his face as he continued to look. That's just cool. He could probably absorb enough nature chakra to go sage mode in a single second in that place, second only to the mountain he originally trained the technique on. Able to hear the commotion from Soren about trees, Vivi walked over to Naruto and grabbed the binoculars from him, a small smile coming to her face as she saw the mass of sturdy and large trees that had the attention of the other two. That's Sabayati Archipelago. It's not an actual bunch of islands, it's just a mass of trees big enough for people to live on. A mangrove forest. If there's a way to get past the red line, we'll definitely find it here. Johnny had a grin on his face as he heard that they were close to landing the ship somewhere once again. That's great. I wonder if there's anyone strong here to fight. He grabbed the binoculars from Naruto and got a good look at the archipelago. It looks lively enough from here. No, absolutely not. Hearing Vivi's sudden outburst got everyone on the deck's attention, and it almost gave Soren enough of a jolt to get him to fall out of the crow's nest. The princess in question had a very serious look on her face and seemed to be looking at all three men with some anger in her eyes. What's the matter, Vivi Heim? Naruto asked, wondering what had nearly set her off just now. Vivi pointed at him sternly, getting him to take a step back before she switched to pointing at Johnny and then at Soren. If we're going to go here, then all three of you are going to have to be good for once. Seriously. No messing around this time, and I'm not kidding one bit. No starting trouble, understood? Why? Soren asked. He rather liked starting trouble, or at least taking part in some kind of debauchery. It would be a rather hard habit to kick cold turkey. We get into trouble pretty much everywhere else, so what's the deal with this place? There was probably a good reason if Vivi of all people felt the need to speak up and tell them so. Usually Nojiko would be the one to tell them all to stay out of trouble, but she said it so much they barely listened to her anymore. She usually didn't even end up heeding her own advice anyway. But Vivi never raised her voice with any kind of authority, hence why they were paying close attention to her. In order to answer his question, Vivi pointed at the island. You can't just do as you like here. There's a marine base stationed on the southern side of Sabayati Archipelago, and we're so close to both Marijoy and Marineford that if you started a mess here it wouldn't take too much to turn a whole major incident out of it. So please just stay away from the southern end of the area altogether. You make it seem like we're going to go out of our way to look for trouble. Naruto said, almost pouting at being put on the spot. When he looked at Vivi he saw her glaring at him particularly hard. In particular, what's the matter? Vivi got up in Naruto's face, unnerving him at how completely grave she was being. This was clearly not something to take light of, at least as far as Vivi was concerned. I want to hear you promise me that you are not going to fight anyone here. No one. I don't care if you see someone about to die in front of you, you don't fight. His face twisted into a frown at that thought, and Vivi's face softened considerably, but she stayed firm. Promise me none of you are going to get into trouble here. It's too important. So this would be like at Water 7, only here things were close enough to the enemy's gate so to speak that the usual sweetheart, easygoing Vivi felt the need to assert just how quickly things could degenerate. They all could have said that they were going to do whatever they wanted, and honestly it was expected of Soren to do just that. Thus it was rather surprising when all three of the men in the presence of Vivi all simultaneously spoke at the same time. Fine, I promise. Naruto, Soren, and Johnny all looked at each other and shrugged at the strange occurrence. Vivi blinked at the whole speaking in unison thing before a relieved smile came over her face and she leaned against the steering wheel of the ship. You mean it, right? She asked, getting nods from all three as Soren climbed down from the crow's nest. Good, and I really can't stress this enough, do not pick fights with anyone, you can't do as you like. And if you see a world noble, do not do anything to them, just bow like everyone else. That's all. Both Naruto and Soren thought, grimacing at the notion. Naruto hadn't bowed to anyone in over 120 years of life with the exception of the time he had begged the Raikage to spare Uchiha Sasuke's life, and Soren was not about to bow down to anyone period, he was too much an anarchist to give a damn about the useless figurehead nobles. In the case of seeing a world noble they would probably be better advised to simply vanish if they saw one because they were not going to bow, they both knew that right then and there. As a matter of fact, as far as Soren was concerned. Can't I just? No, you cannot melt the world nobles, Soren. I will cut you. Soren recoiled at the jolt from Vivi yelling at him and fell off of the mast he had been climbing down. Luckily his neck broke his fall and he jumped right back up with a lump on his bald head. You're getting a touch of the sociopathic tendencies from Uzumaki, aren't you? Vivi blushed at being called out on her outburst and chose to just walk away. I've been on a ship with all of you for months now. It had to happen eventually. But do not mess with the world nobles. Seriously, she said as she went back inside the ship to wait for them to reach Sabayati and inform all of the others. Johnny just watched where Vivi had been previously standing and then turned to both Naruto and Soren. You're not going to listen to her, are you? He said in a voice that more or less already expected the answer to be no. He would be pleasantly or not so pleasantly surprised by his captain's answer though. I have to, even if I did want to do something stupid. Naruto said in a disenchanted tone of voice, she made me promise, damn it. You soft bastard. Soren jibed in return, not mentioning the fact that he had promised to be on good behavior as well. Oh, shut up. Naruto snapped half-heartedly before sighing, she has a point anyway. We need to figure out what to do to get past the red line first, even if we did get an itch to cause some trouble. It wouldn't do to make a mess of things without even getting the reason that they'd be going to Sabayati Archipelago for in the first place, so he'd have to choke down his first instincts for the first time since Water 7 to raise havoc. That meant no reacting to others either, which probably wouldn't be as hard as it was on Jaya in Mock Town. They probably weren't the only crew there that would be put on very short leashes while there, so at least there was the chance that others wouldn't be spoiling for fights either. XXX. Sabayati Archipelago. Grove 23 of 79 Lawless Area. You seriously need to take it easy, Naruto. Miss Valentine said as she took note of Naruto walking around with a scowl on his face. What's the matter? You look all kinds of upset and we just got here. She asked as he walked around alongside her, ignoring the bubbles floating about and the people in the streets. He didn't voice it aloud, but just being in that place was putting a damper on his usual mood. He had gone into sage mode before getting off of the ship to look around the island for information and wound up feeling a lot of negative feelings despite the abundance of nature in the form of the very powerful mangrove trees that could reach the ocean floor. Naruto's ability to sense most lifeforms in the area due to sage mode and his latent skill to feel the emotions of said people due to another talent of his originally overwhelmed him. There were a lot of people that were happy or at the very least content, in fact the vast majority were. But on the other end of that he also felt a lot of distress from one particular area toward the middle of the archipelago. They had landed around the 23rd Grove and had docked there. Each tree was large enough to be designated as its own particular island for people to live, build places, and operate normally on, thus they were designated groves for each tree that comprised the place. The part that they had stationed the natural disaster in was the place where most pirates, bounty hunters, and other lawless individuals hung around. From that point the crew had split up for their own means. Soren had gone into town to find somewhere to get a drink and wound up being followed by Johnny and Yosaku. Nojiko had gone with Vivi and Karu to buy supplies and just overall shop. Polly stayed on the ship and stayed busy with a quick maintenance check while they were in a place to rest, willing to take Vivi's warning to heart and knowing full well that there was no way they'd be able to stay out of trouble. With him on the ship was Corona, his prisoner. She was getting to be very annoying since she wanted to leave the ship and explore, but her warden, Polly, was not about to step one foot off of the ship to do so. This left a very grumpy Naruto who originally intended to go off on his own. He did not get to do so however, because Miss Valentine quickly followed him. No one was really supposed to be left alone in a strange place, so she was in the right and he couldn't fault her for following his own crew instructions, but that didn't mean he had to like the way it ended up. Valentine-chan, you should really go find someone else, Naruto said, trying to keep the ire from the feeling he had felt while sensing this place out of his voice for her benefit. It wasn't her fault or her problem. It had just been a very long time since he had tried to tap into his energy that allowed him to feel people's emotions. There had simply been no need. I'm not going to be a whole lot of fun here. Well, we'll have to make it fun, won't we? Laughing as she did so, Miss Valentine jumped onto Naruto's back as light as a feather and held on tightly. I propose a game. Whenever I ask you something and you don't give me a direct answer, I'll put more and more weight on. You'd better consider the things you say carefully or you might end up in a crater. Hearing the terms of the game got Naruto to feel some trepidation over his chances. One way or the other, can't I just take you to the amusement park this place has and be done with it? Miss Valentine let of a scoff with her ever-present smile still plastered on her face. An amusement park. I can fly higher than any ride and move faster than any roller coaster can. What's the fun in that? And what am I? 8. She gestured grandly to the masses of possible pirates, bounty hunters, and other lowlifes in the vicinity. This is where I consider the fun to be. It's definitely better than hanging around a bunch of boring normal people all day. Rolling his eyes but admitting that she was in the same vein of thinking that he had, Naruto felt the need to comment on something. I don't get what's so lawless about this place. I mean, pirates hang out here and everything, but other than that nothing cool or lawless. At that point a man was thrown out of a window in front of them on the street and jumped up with a few gashes on his face to get back inside of the building, only to get hit with a wooden chair that splintered over his head and rendered him unconscious. Both Naruto and Miss Valentine looked inside to see many patrons of a bar in a raucous fight while many others just cheered them on, some contributing by throwing empty bottles into the fray. Seeing this put a mischievous gleam in Miss Valentine's eye that Naruto was unable to see from her place on his back. Ooh, can I? No, Valentine-chan. Vivi-Heim told us to stay out of trouble. Yeah, and trouble qualifies as something we're not supposed to do to normal law-abiding citizens. Pirates, bounty hunters, and other people like that don't count. As long as we're in this part of Sabayati Archipelago we can do whatever we want as long as we don't go overboard. She obviously didn't go anywhere near this part of town when she came here with her father. Who would take a princess to see this? At Valentine's query, a man stripped of his all clothes ran out of the bar and down the street, giving everyone on the street quite a show. This was something that Naruto had to admit proved her point to an extent. So you're saying that as long as we don't mess with anyone important enough like one of the world nobles Vivi-Heim seems so scared of, and as long as we stay here we can do anything we want. Fate seemed to answer his question when a man inside of the bar pulled out a pistol and fired it in the air to end the fight and clear everyone out. It had the opposite effect though, as upon hearing a gunshot the combatants all started pulling out their own guns and began a shootout. It seems like it. Miss Valentine sounded quite pleased with that bit of information, as being all demure and keeping the peace didn't particularly appeal to her from the start. XXX. With Soren, Johnny, and Yosaku, Grove 13 Shaki's rip-off bar. Okay, first it was funny when you said 100,000, but seriously. 20,000 belly for a bottle. Soren raged as he sat at a bar, almost foaming acid from the mouth in disbelief. Are you out of your rabbit-ass mind? I am not paying that much for a drink. For that much money that drink better give me a full head of hair and make women fall in love with me at first glance. The woman behind the bar stood with her cheek in her hand as she leaned against the counter, an amused look on her face. She had short black hair, a pink t-shirt with a black spider on it that revealed a bit of her cleavage, a black jacket over that with a gray stripe down the sleeves and black frills at the ends of the sleeves and the collar, a yellow bead necklace, a pair of pants with an odd pattern, and white shoes. She let out a plume of smoke from the cigarette in her hand she had been smoking before speaking to Soren. Well, for all you know those things could happen, so why don't you just buy the booze and find out? Soren gave the woman a dry look and pointed at Johnny and Yosaku, who were both enjoying the exact same drink Soren himself was trying to purchase, because I'm not stupid like them. They're going to go back to Uzumaki and try to bum some money off of him, and they're going to be in for a rude awakening. Now could you give me a more reasonable price here? I'm begging you. The grin that came to the woman's face got Soren's eye to twitch in annoyance. It doesn't sound like you're begging at all. You don't sound like you really want that drink if you ask me. Please lower the price so I can get drunk, please. Soren growled out lowly. Steam from his own acid began rising off of his body at having to jump through hoops just to get a touch of alcohol. He would have just left, but Johnny and Yosaku didn't seem to want to leave anytime soon, and he didn't want to blow any more time looking for another bar while sober. He had to be good and drunk if he wanted to wander around some new place aimlessly, otherwise it wouldn't work out so well. Well, since you asked so nicely, the bartender said, pulling up a bottle of Soren's desired drink and putting a smile on his face before she uttered the price again, 5,000 belly. Muttering to himself about how that was still 5 times more than normal, Soren reached into his wallet and fished out a 5,000 belly mark, handing it over for his bottle. So how in the world do you actually get business with fucked up prices like these? He asked curiously as he spit on the top of the bottle and melted the cork off. We're kind of famous because of it, the woman said, watching Soren drink with interest. Or did the name, Shacky's Rip-Off Bar, mean nothing to you when you walked in here? In fact, it hadn't meant anything when they had all walked in. We just thought that was some kind of catchy name to net some customers, Soren admitted in a deadpan tone of voice, and I'm guessing that you would be Shacky then. Shikuyaku at your service, but if you actually call me that I'll kick you out. Shacky said with a smile, and I know you as well, Soren, the plague. Quite a high bounty you sport, 251 million. She nodded her head over towards Johnny and Yosaku as they were unaware of anything currently happening. Those two aren't bad, but meh. Soren took a deep swig before setting his bottle down and wiping his mouth, looking at Shacky with some suspicion. You know who we are that easily. I keep an eye out on the new blood, Shacky said, taking a drag from her cigarette, and you and yours are rather interesting. You and your captain have absurdly high bounties, even for rookies. I'm not a rookie, Soren defended with a frown. He'd been running up and down the beginning part of the Grand Line for years. He had been born on the Grand Line. But then again, on the other hand, he wasn't an active pirate until was forced to join Naruto's crew more or less by way of impressment, so he technically was a rookie, but we're not pirates anyway. At least Naruto kept asserting that they weren't. Whatever you have to tell yourself, laughed Shacky at Soren's flimsy excuse. You know you guys aren't as scary as the papers swear that you are. If you read those things they make it sound like Uzumaki drowns puppies for fun and you personally eat babies. Of course Soren doesn't eat babies. Yosaku chimed in from their stools at Soren's side, he and Johnny finally paying attention to their friend's conversation with the bartender. How could you even say something like that? Nodding in agreement with the power swordsman, Soren took another drink before speaking again. Yeah, I don't eat babies. That's absurd. Another drink and he added on to his previous comment, babies have little to no nutritional value. If you want to eat kids you have to wait until they get around 5 years old. Any older than 13 though and they get all tough and hard to chew. Thank goodness for the EB no MI on that front though. And the thing that stopped the bar cold, even his own crewmates, was that he had a completely serious expression on his face when he said that. All Soren did instead of elaborating on his morbid and very disturbing statement was finish off his bottle all at once before frowning at the lack of content within, drained by his own thirst. Oi, can I get another? He asked, fishing around in his pocket for his wallet again. Before he could get his money out to pay, hoping that Shacky wouldn't jack up the price again, another bottle was placed directly in front of him. Soren looked up to see Shacky shaking her head. This one is on the house, baby eater, Soren. Soren looked at her with a raised eyebrow until his eyes widened in horror. Oh no. I swear to God that better not stick or I'm going to kill somebody. Johnny and Yosaku were able to get a few laughs at Soren's expense as he grumbled and melted the cork off of his second bottle before starting in on it. With the bar back to normal after the previous uncomfortable comment, Johnny decided to make some conversation as well. So you know Soren. Do you know about us too? Shacky nodded and began busying herself with the cleaning of glasses. How much? Enough, Shacky said cryptically. It's kind of creepy though. You're the 9th big-time rookie crew on the Grand Line to reach this place at once. Weird timing. 9th big-time crew. Now that was a topic of interest to Yosaku. There were other crews perceived as being rivals strong to the Foxhound crew there as well. Who else is here? XXX. With Nojiko, Vivi, and Murat, Grove 45 tourist shopping area. Happily wandering out of a store while holding onto a string connected to a floating bubble that contained all kinds of shoes and new clothes, Nojiko walked over to a cafe where she found Vivi and Murat sitting and waiting with Karu napping right next to them. The doctor of the pair had a somewhat wistful look on her face, something that Nojiko addressed. "I didn't expect you guys to actually be waiting out here when I got out of that store." "What's with Murat, by the way?" Vivi shook her head with a frown on her face. "I don't know. We went looking around and split up for a bit to look in different stores. I saw her go into a medical supply store because she said that the boys were burning through her supplies by being dumb all of the time, and when I came back out she was sitting here looking like this." She waved her hand in front of Murat's face, getting her to stop it and move it out of the way before letting out another longing sigh. "Do you think she's all right?" Hearing the worry in the younger girl's voice at the well-being of their resident doctor, Nojiko handed Vivi her the bubble containing her purchases while she kneeled down to get a good look at Murat's lucidly smiling face. "Hello. Is there anyone home in there?" She snapped her fingers repeatedly in her face to get her attention, which she finally received when Murat jolted to awareness. "What in the world happened to you? You were seriously out of it." Bringing up the topic of what put her in such a state, Murat sat slack in her chair with a blush on her cheeks. "I met the coolest guy ever when I was looking at some of the high-end emergency equipment in the store. He's a doctor, and get this, he's a captain of a crew of pirates after One Piece." "A doctor that's a captain too? And he made it all the way out here?" Vivi said in a bit of amazement. With what they had gleaned thus far, it was quite a feat to go all the way from Reverse Mountain to this point of the Grand Line. "That's actually really impressive." She then paid close attention to the fond way Murat had been speaking about this man and got a sly smirk on her face. "Wait, are you actually into this guy?" Murat spared Vivi a glance before straightening up in her chair, smoothing out her skirt as she pretended to be busy to avoid eye contact. "So what if I am? I'm a perfectly adult 19-year-old woman that can make my own decisions. It doesn't stop you from having your little complex with." "Ow." Before Murat could finish her sentence meant to poke fun at Vivi, Karu inexplicably awoke and pecked her once in the head. "Stupid duck." Byplay between her fellow crewmates aside, Nojiko was still curious over this new development. Yosaku had been trying to get Murat's favor and failing miserably for months, and now she had come across some guy that she had seemed to fallen hard for. The gossip in her wanted to hear a name, even if she had no idea who the person was, which was more than likely. So who exactly is this guy in the first place? "He's so cool." Just to clarify, Murat felt the need to reiterate that fact in case it had been lost in translation over the course of the conversation at hand. "His name is Trafalgar Law." XXX. With Naruto and Miss Valentine, Grove 17 lawless area. As the pair sat in a restaurant, watching on with trepidation, Miss Valentine inwardly wondered if she should stop Naruto before he managed to hurt himself, or more importantly the poor table that he was repeatedly slamming his head into. "Naruto, you should stop." But he wasn't really hearing her at the moment. Each bang of his head off of the table was accentuated with either one of two words that at this point seemed like they would follow him all over the rest of the world. "No. Ramen. No. Ramen. No. Ramen. No. Ramen. God damn it. No ramen. Why is there never any ramen?" he yelled, alarming all of the patrons in the restaurant more than they already had been by his mental breakdown. "It can't possibly be that hard to make. You can't even make it yourself and your directions were completely half-assed." Miss Valentine commented while looking at her own menu now that Naruto had ceased abusing their poor table with his forehead. "How can you expect anyone else to be able to?" "Don't blame me for that," Naruto said, placing his head down on the table with a defeated look on his face. "I became dependent on the greatest source of ramen the mortal plane has ever known. Anything else that I tried to make was rubbish." It didn't help that he could routinely burn water, which was why he wasn't that picky with his food. He had been feeding himself and eating in restaurants all over the elemental nations for over 50 years after leaving Konoha for good. Sometimes he wished he knew the Edo Tensei and pure world resurrection. He was probably deprived enough of good ramen to deal with the moral faults of bringing someone back from the dead at the cost of another's body if only he could have a Yame or Tsuki to cook for him again. At times he figured that he couldn't even remember the sweet taste of Ichiraku ramen. Even other places that served it in the elemental nations paled in comparison to the point where he stopped eating it except for once every blue moon in an attempt to rekindle the spark. But at least it had always been an option, now he didn't even have that. You never know quite what you have until it's gone. It was not an obsession. It was merely a passion. Was that food really that important to him that it affected his overall mood? This was what Miss Valentine was thinking about as she proceeded to pat Naruto's head to try and cheer him up. Come on, it's okay. Why don't you try a steak? Don't want a steak. Want ramen. A grown man older than 3 grown men put together pouting over food in a restaurant. There was something deeply wrong with that. Well, you can't have ramen so act your age. If I acted my age then I'd be dead. Hearing Naruto be so childish began to work on Miss Valentine's nerves, and instead of patting his head like she had been doing, she grabbed a hold of his spiky golden locks and pulled his head off of the table. Naruto, order some food, she said in a deceptively sweet voice, her face still smiling all the while. This smile had a rather foreboding undertone behind it though. Okay Valentine-chan, Naruto said, not willing to risk earning the usually good-natured woman's ire in a public place. She didn't care about his reputation, she'd emasculate him if she felt the need to since she knew he'd never hurt her. She had clearly picked that up from Nojiko. They have this pizza crap here but no ramen, this world's going to hell in a handbasket. Who's spouting crap about pizza? If I have to hear one more word about that stupid non-existent ramen, I'm gonna kick some ass. That got Naruto's full attention, and not in the good way, as he spun around in his chair, looking for the person trying to slight his perfect food. Upon seeing who it was, his argument died in his throat. Wait, Jewelry Bonnie. You're here. The pink-haired female pirate captain blinked curiously upon seeing who was sitting right behind her the entire time. Too bad she had been too busy eating the mountains of food at her table to notice beforehand. Uzumaki Naruto, she said questioningly. There should be a captain in there somewhere, Naruto said, raising a finger as if to make a definitive point. Ignoring the statement, Bonnie shook her head at the sight of the 2 blondes sitting right there by her. Well, I'll be damned, I didn't think I'd ever be seeing your stupid-looking face again after the things I've heard. Miss Valentine smirked at the sight of an old familiar face. Wow, I really wasn't expecting to see her again after that run-in with those cyborgs on that island where she took off at the first sign of trouble. Getting a growl of anger out of Bonnie, Miss Valentine let out a laugh. With Soren, Johnny, and Yosaku, Shaki's rip-off bar. With time to kill, they were regaled by tales from Shaki about the other notable rookie pirate crews that were currently at Sabayati Archipelago, those with bounties that exceeded 100 million belly. And that was where things quickly degenerated in a matter of seconds. Both Soren and Shaki stared at the front door of the bar as it was thrown open with only 2 dust trails otherwise visible. Shaki looked at the 2 vacant bar stools that used to house Johnny and Yosaku. What did I say to set them off? She asked, wondering exactly what it was that got the 2 swordsmen to sprint out. You told them that the kid pirates were here, Soren replied matter-of-factly, not really caring one way or the other, and who could blame him? Hey, they were big boys and they could take care of themselves. They've got an axe to grind with those guys for what they did to a village a while back. Now they were going to be running around the entire place looking for them just to get some payback. Hopefully they'd get lost and sidetracked, and that would be the end of that until the next time the topic came up. The intelligence level of the 2 men did not give Shaki much confidence in their chances of having an easy time of it if they did indeed find the kid pirates. You really should go after them. I had heard that you were the first mate on your crew, so aren't they your responsibility? She said, trying to urge Soren to get up and go after them. They're older than me. I'm not even 20 yet. Why do I have to be the responsible one? Complained Soren in return. He had finally managed to get some peace and quiet, and now he'd have to lose all of that. Damn it, he hated the fact that he liked this crew. Fine, I'm going, he said, standing up out of his stool with a grumble. It wouldn't do to have the idiot brothers tear apart an entire grove trying to find and fight some people, and that wasn't even worst-case scenario for what those 2 airheads might do if they actually wound up finding their targets. Throwing a half-hearted wave of departure to the bar's host Shaki, Soren ran out the open door to try and find Johnny and Yosaku. They hadn't even been there for 6 hours yet and trouble was already beginning to bubble up. Being in the place was going to be more trouble than it was worth. Isn't this a bitch? I used to be a feared killer that made Marines shake in their boots, and now I'm a babysitter for two dumbass swordsmen. Soren thought to himself as he stomped past the people outside to begin his search. I think I'm going to hate this place. XXX. With Johnny and Yosaku. Gonna kick some ass. Johnny yelled with his hand on the hilt of his sword as the two ran side by side, people clearing out of their way as they did so. Yeah, Yosaku bellowed in agreement before gnashing his teeth heatedly. They didn't know exactly what they were looking for, but they would be damned if they didn't wind up looking high and low for those smug kid pirate bastards. They're probably scheming, or even conniving right now. The conniving bastards, was the nearly nonsensical reply from Johnny. They continued to run until Yosaku inexplicably stopped abruptly to stare at a young man sitting on a crate with an odashi at his side. He was a slim, unassuming-looking man with slight bags under his eyes, a calm and even smile on his face, black hair, sideburns, a small goatee, a white spotted fur hat on his head, a yellow hoodie with black sleeves that were rolled up to show his tattooed forearms and hands, jeans with brown spots on the knees and ankles, and black shoes. Johnny turned around and ran back to Yosaku to find him staring at the man. Hey, come on. What are you stopping here for? Let's go kick those bastards' asses already. Remembering the reason they had run out of Shaki's bar in the first place, Yosaku took off running with Johnny again, leaving the interesting-looking man alone to sit on his crate. Even though the run-in was over, Yosaku couldn't help but think, why did I feel like I wanted to fight that guy like a dog defending its property? It couldn't just be for the sword, could it? Kubikiraboucho is way cooler. Somewhere else with Vivi and Nojiko, Murat suddenly sneezed harshly. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.